New Guinea, the second largest island in the world after Greenland, is politically divided in two. The eastern half is Papua New Guinea. The western half is Irian Jaya, a former Dutch colony that became an Indonesian province in 1963. On the southern coast of this province live the Asmat. In 1981, a joint team of Indonesian and Japanese filmmakers were allowed to enter this remote and almost unknown region. They spent 5 months with the Asmat, who were known for having practiced headhunting and cannibalism. Although these fierce warriors had stopped their ritual conflicts, they had retained their way of life based on hunting, fishing, and the exploitation of the sago palm, a way of life that had not changed for hundreds of years. The Asmat coast borders the Arafura Sea. Shallow, bristling with coral reefs, a place of violent storms, possibly one of the most dangerous seas in the world. Twice a day, muddy tidal waters flow across most of the littoral area. With the low tide, the sea recedes several kilometers, leaving behind insalubrious swamps teeming with fish. It's difficult to tell where the ocean ends and the marsh begins. The Asmat homeland is not a land as such, but a vast alluvial swamp where a maze of rivers and streams cut and wind through dense flooded jungle. Around 65,000 Asmat people live in about 100 small villages scattered along the rivers. From their warrior past, they have kept the habit of settling along the outer bends of rivers for a better view of an approaching enemy. The Asmat are traditionally semi-nomads, but in an attempt at better control, the Indonesian government has undertaken to settle them in permanent villages such as this one, Osenep. Each settlement has a mission school teacher and a government officer, whose primary role is to enforce the ban on tribal warfare, which was the basis of the Asmat way of life up to the early 70s. The Asmat, however, rarely stay long in their official village, spending long stretches of time in the forest, fishing, hunting, and gathering sago. In the old warrior days, when the men devoted all their time and energy to near-permanent tribal wars, the women had to provide for their families. Although warfare is now banned, the Asmat women are still in charge of fishing, collecting firewood, and gathering plants for food. Because of the frequent floods, Asmat houses are usually built on stilts. The Asmat have domesticated dogs, chickens, pigs, and a distant relative of the ostrich, the cassowary. The bird is a major figure in Asmat mythology, as it presides over the alternation of days and nights. The women devote a large portion of their time to making skirts, using plant fibers or dried leaves. The same materials are used to weave thick mats for sitting or sleeping, bags, and hoop nets for fishing. Grass skirts are the only garment the women and children ever wear. They can be left to hang or gathered between the legs and tied at the back. The time has come to go back to the forest. The men, women, children, and dogs will find a place in the canoes, along with their food, weapons, and tools. They also need smoldering embers that will be used during the trip to cook the midday meal. As they paddle, they sing the traditional songs that tell of wars and praise the victories of the ancestors. The waterways are the only paths through the jungle, and canoes the only means of transport. In the forest, wildlife abounds, particularly along the riverbanks where birds congregate. There are ibises, egrets, pelicans, cockatoos, hummingbirds, parrots, hornbills, and birds of paradise, of which more than 35 species are known on the island. In the forest, there is more food than around the villages, and the Asmat can lead a freer life with no government officer or missionary to observe them. No Asmat would leave home without this essential item, an ancestor skull. The skull you're carrying under your arm, do you always take it with you?
Yes, I do. I always take it with me. Whether I go to the forest or return to the village, I take it wherever I go.
Do you also keep it at night? Is it the skull of someone in particular? And what does it mean to you?
Yes, it's my pillow. It means a lot to me because it's the skull of one of my children.
What
do you prefer, living in the village or in the forest?
I know this place very well. This creek has always belonged to my family. This territory is truly mine. There is a lot of food in the forest. In the village, we only eat what we bring back from the forest.
Decorated with seeds, feathers, and shells, ancestor skulls are an integral part of daily life. Several families share this large hut, each with their own fireplace. Supplies and clothes are packed in nets suspended from the ceiling, preferably over a fire to keep insects away. There is plenty of food in the forest, and especially many sago palm trees, from which the Asmat extract the starchy sago flour that makes up their staple diet. Sago palms are only useful once they begin to produce flowers and reach 50 years of age. Once a tree is cut down, it's split along its length. The pith is crushed with adzes, fitted with bone or wood blades. Stones do not exist in the swamp that is Asmat land. In the past, the rare stone tools they had came from the far northern mountains, acquired through barter with other tribes. In Asmat society, daily tasks are strictly divided between men and women. The extraction of sago is one of the few activities carried out by the whole family. To remove some of the starch, the pulp is squeezed, washed and filtered, and left to decant in a gutter made of sago tree bark. The word Asmat means the people of the trees, and they are dependent on the trees in almost every aspect of their lives. Whether for food and clothes, building homes and canoes, or making weapons and utensils. And of all trees, the sago palm is their tree of life, the only wealth the Asmat possess. The bark and the leaves are used to build houses, to weave mats and grass skirts, to make fires and to create ornaments. The hard spikes become needles and wood carving tools. The pulp is their everyday food, and sometimes also helps to heal injuries. Every Asmat owns a number of sago trees passed on through their family. These trees, given names just like people, are scattered throughout the forest, sometimes very far from the villages, forcing the Asmat to move often. The flour obtained after decanting is compressed into large blocks of about 4 kilos, roasted to a semi-glutinous consistency to facilitate their preservation and transport. The sago blocks are grilled until a thick paste is formed. The result tastes rather bland on its own. To vary their diet, the Asmat use the wildlife of the forest. They eat all kinds of insect larvae, with a preference for the grubs of the large Capricorn beetle that lays its eggs inside dead sago trunks. Enjoyed alive or cooked on a wood fire, these sago grubs are the essential delicacy of any Asmat celebration. Birds' eggs are also a favorite, and easy to find if you know where to look. These mounds, for example, conceal the nests of wild hens called malio that take advantage of low tides to lay their eggs in the temporarily uncovered sand. The eggs make a very tasty meal when wrapped in leaves for roasting on a fire. The forest also offers all sorts of animals to hunt, such as birds, flying foxes, marsupials, and wild boars, which are the most difficult to kill, for they have sharp tusks to defend themselves. 2 boars. This time the hunt has been good.
We started out by just walking around the forest with our dogs. When they picked up the trail of a boar, they started to bark. They barked and barked without stopping. They drove it to the creek. Then we surrounded it and hit it with our spears, but it wouldn't die. So I shot some arrows into it, and so did my friend Bife. The pig ran in a circle and finally died. After that, we tied it up and carried it back.
In the meantime, the women and children have been tracking iguanas. Their flesh is a delicacy, and their skin is used to cover drums. Bamboo shoots, palm hearts, sugar cane, wild herbs, green ferns, skirt-making leaves, and a mustachoid muskrat. Not an Asmat nursery rhyme, just the typical shopping basket of an Asmat housewife. All found in the forest, less than half an hour from the camp. They will use this bivouac for 2 or 3 months, the time it takes to exhaust the surrounding food resources. During that time, the group will return to the village 2 days a week to feed those left behind. Each in her corner, the women prepare the meal for their own family. Food is always either roasted or grilled, because the Asmat do not have clay pots in which to cook their food. The mud of the marshes is of too poor a quality to be used to make pottery. Because Irian Jaya is close to the equator, night comes abruptly and the temperature falls sharply. By 8 o'clock, everyone is in bed. Huddling together to keep warm, close to the fire to ward off mosquitoes, their heads resting on an ancestor's skull, they sleep a calm and fear-free sleep. The spirits of the dead are watching over them.